The moment I told my best friend I was leaving, something inside her seemed to break so quietly that I almost missed it. 1 second, Maren Whitlock was standing beside me beneath the bright afternoon sun, holding 2 paper cups of coffee and smiling the same familiar smile that had carried me through the worst years of my life. The next second, the color disappeared from her face. She did not ask why. She did not tell me to stay. She did not even blink. She simply placed both cups on the hood of my car, stepped toward me with tears gathering in her gray-blue eyes, and kissed me as if she had been waiting half her life to do it. If you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. By supporting our family and our community, you help more emotional stories like this reach people who may need a little hope today. Until that kiss, I had believed I understood every part of my friendship with Maren. We had grown up 3 houses apart in a quiet coastal town in Maine, where the streets smelled of salt and pine and everyone knew which families were struggling even when nobody spoke about it. Maren had been the fearless one when we were children. She climbed trees in worn sneakers, defended smaller kids at school, and laughed whenever the wind ruined her carefully brushed hair. I, Callum Pierce, had always been more cautious. After my father abandoned my mother and me when I was 11, I learned to expect people to leave. I stopped trusting promises and started hiding behind jokes, silence, and careful plans. Maren was the only person who never allowed me to disappear completely. She sat beside me on the school steps when I refused to go home. She helped my mother carry groceries when money was tight. She attended every one of my photography exhibitions, even the embarrassing early ones held in the back corner of the public library. Through every disappointment, she stayed, and because she stayed so consistently, I made the terrible mistake of believing she always would. By the time we reached our late 20s, our lives had settled into a rhythm that felt permanent. Maren worked as an occupational therapist at a rehabilitation clinic, helping injured patients rebuild confidence in hands and bodies that no longer moved the way they once had. I photographed weddings, family portraits, and local businesses, while secretly dreaming of becoming a documentary photographer. Every Tuesday afternoon, Maren met me at Harbor Street Cafe. Every Saturday, we walked the old cliff path overlooking the Atlantic. We knew each other's habits, fears, favorite meals, and most painful memories. Yet beneath that closeness lived an invisible boundary neither of us dared to cross. I dated women who were never quite right for me. Maren occasionally went out with men who admired her beauty but never understood her quiet exhaustion. Whenever either relationship ended, we returned to one another with sympathetic smiles and carefully neutral embraces. I told myself that friendship was safer than love. Love could be withdrawn, betrayed, or abandoned. Friendship with Maren felt unbreakable, and I was too afraid to risk the one relationship that had never failed me. The decision to move came disguised as the opportunity one had wanted for years. A respected environmental magazine in Seattle offered me a full-time position photographing communities affected by climate change. It meant stable income, meaningful work, travel, and the chance to prove that my life could become larger than the town where everyone remembered the frightened boy my father had left behind. I accepted the offer before telling Maren. I told myself I wanted to be certain before burdening her with the news, but the truth was uglier. I knew her reaction mattered more than anyone else's, and I was terrified that one look from her might make me stay. For 5 days, I carried the secret through our ordinary routines. I listened as she described a patient taking his first independent steps after months of therapy. I helped her choose paint samples for her kitchen. I photographed her laughing beside the harbor, the sunlight turning the edges of her hair pale gold. Every moment felt like a farewell she did not know she was experiencing. On Friday afternoon, I finally asked her to meet me at the abandoned overlook where we used to sit after high school. The sky was bright and clear, and the ocean below reflected the sun in thousands of sharp, silver flashes. Maren arrived wearing a blue cardigan and carrying our coffees, teasing me for sounding unusually serious in my message. I had rehearsed the announcement so many times that the words felt mechanical when they left me. I told her about Seattle, the magazine, the salary, and the apartment I had already agreed to rent. I told her I would leave in 12 days. At first, she simply stared at me. Then her fingers tightened around the cups until the cardboard bent. I expected questions or anger, but she offered neither. She set the coffees down, stepped close enough for me to smell the faint lavender soap she always used, and kissed me. It was not a gentle, uncertain kiss. It carried years of swallowed confessions, missed opportunities, and loneliness neither of us had admitted. For one stunned moment, I kissed her back. My hands lifted toward her waist, and the entire world seemed to narrow to the warmth of her lips and the trembling breath between us. Then fear crashed through me. I stepped away so abruptly that she nearly lost her balance. The pain on her face was immediate and devastating. I asked what she was doing, though I already knew. Maren's voice came out low and unsteady as she explained that she had loved me for years. She said she had waded through my relationships, my grief, and my endless plans because she believed that one day I might finally see what had always been between us. She had convinced herself there was time. Now I had accepted a new life 3,000 miles away without even trusting her enough to tell her before the decision was complete. Her words exposed every excuse I had hidden behind. Instead of admitting my fear, I became defensive. I told her the job was my dream and accused her of making my departure about herself. The instant I said it, I saw something close inside her. Maren did not raise her voice. She only nodded, wiped her tears, and told me she hoped Seattle gave me everything I wanted. Then she walked away in the bright afternoon sunlight, leaving both untouched coffees cooling on the hood of my car. I stood there unable to move, still feeling her kiss and the unbearable emptiness that followed it. For the next several days, Maren did not answer my calls. The silence unsettled me more than anger would have. Our town seemed filled with her absence. I passed the cafe and saw our usual table empty. I walked the cliff path alone and realized how many memories belonged to both of us. At home, while packing camera equipment, I found an old envelope beneath a stack of photographs. Inside were pictures Maren had saved from our childhood and college years. On the back of each photograph, she had written a date and a small memory. One showed me at 16, holding my first second-hand camera. She had written that it was the day I finally looked hopeful again. Another showed us at 21 after my mother's surgery. Maren had written that she had been frightened but knew we would get through it together. The final photograph had been taken only 6 months earlier. We were sitting side by side on the harbor wall, our shoulders touching, both looking toward the ocean. On the back, she had written that some people feel like home long before anyone is brave enough to admit it. I sat on the floor among half-packed boxes and understood that I had spent years treating Maren's love as something permanent but invisible, like sunlight or air. I depended on it without acknowledging its cost. She had stood beside me through abandonment, financial struggle, my mother's illness, career failures, and every broken relationship. Yet when I received the greatest opportunity of my life, I had excluded her from the decision because emotional honesty frightened me more than distance. I had not chosen Seattle over Maren. I had chosen fear over trust. The following morning, I went to her clinic. Bright sunlight streamed through the tall lobby windows, and patients moved slowly between therapy rooms with walkers and canes. A receptionist told me Maren was helping with an outdoor rehabilitation session in the courtyard. I found her kneeling beside an elderly woman who was practicing how to lift gardening tools after a stroke. Maren's face was patient and encouraging, but when she saw me, her expression hardened. I waited until the session ended and apologized without excuses. I told her she had every right to feel betrayed. I admitted that I had known my decision would hurt her, which was why I had delayed telling her. I confessed that the kiss had not frightened me because it was unwanted. It had frightened me because I had wanted it for years. Maren listened, but the apology did not erase the damage. She told me love was not proven by panic at the moment of loss. She needed to know whether I truly loved her or merely feared leaving without her forgiveness. Her question stayed with me all afternoon. I walked through town, revisiting the places where we had grown up, but instead of feeling trapped by them, I finally saw how deeply Maren had shaped the man I had become. She had not prevented me from chasing my dreams. She had made me brave enough to have them. Loving her did not mean surrendering my future. It meant allowing someone to stand beside me while I built it. That evening, though the sun was still high in the late summer sky, I called the magazine's editor. I did not reject the position. Instead, I asked whether the start date could be delayed and whether the role could include scheduled travel back east. I explained that I had made a life-changing decision too quickly and needed time to handle it responsibly. To my surprise, the editor respected my honesty. The magazine agreed to postpone my move for 6 weeks and allow one remote week every 2 months after I relocated. It was not a perfect solution, but it created space for truth rather than escape. I returned to Maren's house the next afternoon carrying no dramatic gifts, only the old envelope of photographs and a printed copy of the revised offer. I told her I was still going to Seattle because abandoning the opportunity out of guilt would eventually create resentment. But I also told her I no longer wanted to pretend that leaving meant erasing what existed between us. I asked her for 6 weeks, not to pressure her into a relationship, but to show her that I could make decisions with honesty, patience, and respect. If she chose not to trust me again, I would accept it. If she was willing to try, I wanted us to face the distance together rather than allowing fear to decide for us. Maren's eyes filled with tears, but she did not immediately forgive me. Over the following weeks, we began the difficult work of speaking honestly. We discussed the years she had spent waiting and the years I had spent protecting myself from abandonment. I apologized to my mother for pretending I was stronger than I felt. Maren admitted that she had hidden her love partly because silence allowed her to avoid rejection. We learned that both of us had contributed to the distance between friendship and something deeper. Some conversations ended with tears. Others ended with laughter at how obvious our feelings had been to nearly everyone but us. Slowly, the hurt became something we could examine instead of something that controlled us. On my final day in Maine, the town was washed in brilliant afternoon light. Maren drove me to the airport, and for most of the journey, we held hands across the center console. There were no promises that distance would be easy. There were no dramatic claims that love could solve every problem. We agreed to call honestly, visit regularly, and speak before resentment became silence. At the departure entrance, I expected our goodbye to feel like an ending. Instead, Maren placed a small wrapped box in my hands. Inside was a leather camera strap engraved with the coordinates of our overlook. Beneath them were the words, "Home is not where you stay. It is who you return to." I looked at her through tears and finally understood that moving away did not have to mean abandoning the person I loved. I kissed her gently, not with panic or desperation, but with the calm certainty that had eluded me for years. 6 months later, Maren accepted a position at a rehabilitation center outside Seattle. She did not move for me alone. The new clinic offered her leadership opportunities and specialized work she had long wanted to pursue. We rented separate apartments at first, determined to build our relationship slowly and wisely. A year later, we returned to Maine together and stood at the same overlook where her silence and one unforgettable kiss had changed everything. This time, I asked her to marry me beneath the clear afternoon sky, and this time, neither of us was afraid to say what we felt. The lesson Maren and I learned was not that love requires someone to abandon a dream. It was that real love asks us to stop hiding behind our dreams, our wounds, and our fear of being left. Sometimes the person who has been beside us all along is not asking us to stay in one place. They are asking us to let them matter when we choose where to go. Before this story ends, leave a meaningful comment about someone who has felt like home to you, or share what you believe matters most when love and life pull people in different directions. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Maren's kiss did not stop me from leaving. It stopped me from running. And in the end, I discovered that the bravest journey of my life was not the flight across the country. It was the moment I finally turned toward the person who had always loved me and allowed myself to love her back.